Good evening. Thank you for coming. Our topic tonight is on the mortgage and the idea of prepaying the mortgage. Before we get too far into it, introduce myself. My name is Chad Labiche. I own Labiche Financial Services here in New Iberia, Louisiana. And this is how these conversations typically work. We're going to spend about 30 minutes together, 20 of which will be mostly me talking on this particular topic. And then the last 10 minutes we'll open it up for questions from the general audience. Now, of course, you can ask a question at any point during this program. You can do it by just typing your question into the chat box, and I'll do my best to respond to you. One of the important things is we want to remember to try to stay as best as we can to try to stay on topic, because with only 30 minutes doesn't allow me too much leeway, which is something I have a problem with from time to time, and getting off track. Alrighty, so let's talk about any questions before we get rolling. Okay, good. The topic tonight is, of course, the mortgage. And it is the idea of, is it right to prepay the mortgage, to overpay the mortgage, to accelerate our mortgage payments in order to extinguish the debt more quickly? And there's a couple of different ways that we've been told we can do this. We can change the amount of money that we're paying, so we can round up. If it's $738 a month, we'll pay $750, or we'll pay $800. We've also been told that we can pay it instead of, let's say it's $800 a month. Instead of paying $800 every month, we pay $400 every other week. That would in turn give us 26 payments instead of 24. So we're making one extra payment through the course of a year. For those of you that are not mathematically inclined this evening, this is going to be a toughie. As frankly, a lot of the topics are, since we're talking about money, and money and math tend to go hand in hand. But I'm going to really do my best to keep the discussion on a theoretical basis and not really getting bogged down on the numbers. So if you see me getting bogged down on the numbers, let me know. I'll either slow down or skip over it. So those are a couple of the different ways. We can also apply a lump sum to our mortgage balance. We get a raise at work. We get a bonus at work. We get a tax return that comes in. So we're faced with the issue of what do we do with this? So we tend to sometimes apply it. Also, refinancing. And instead of going with a 30-year loan, we're looking at a 20-year loan or a 15 or a 10-year loan is indeed another way of accelerating the debt. So those are some of the ways that we do that. Let's get to the actual presentation. And we've already covered a little bit of this, and I kind of already forgot to get that started. So let's talk about the why versus the why not. So why would you want to overpay your mortgage? Well, we've been convinced in a lot of cases that it's the right thing to do. We hear it on the media. The people at the bank tell us. Our financial advisors tell us. Our accountants tell us. People at the water cooler during lunch at work tell us. And they convince us it's the right thing to do. It also feels good. We have a sense of accomplishment that we are working towards a goal, and the goal being either debt-free or paying off a debt early. So it's a feel-good moment for us. It's also very easy. And frankly, this is a big one for people. A lot of times, as a society, we take the easy way out. And I'll try not to get on my soapbox about accountability, but that's the issue. We want the easiest, least painful, least amount of thought needed to make a decision solution. And this is it. Overpay the mortgage. It's a nice, easy way to save money. The numbers are very impressive. I ran some calculations earlier. I don't have them in the slide because they're numbers and I'm trying to stay away from it. But let's assume we have a $150,000 mortgage, and it's a 30-year traditional loan. Well, if we pay it for 30 years, instead of paying $150,000, we're going to actually pay $265,000. Big number. Almost twice what we borrowed. But if we just trim that loan to 20 years, we save ourselves $35,000. And if we can trim the loan to 15 years, we save ourselves $65,000. The numbers by themselves are quite impressive, you have to admit. And you do actually save money. I mean, this is not a fallacy. Prepaying your mortgage and overpaying your monthly note, however you choose to do it, the lump sum, whichever of the varieties that we spoke about, whichever one you choose to do, you are actually saving money. And so that is a reality. You're not being lied to. The argument that we're going to make against it, or the why not, is just as credible as the why. First one is, there are actually faster ways to become debt-free. By prepaying your mortgage and canceling that loan earlier than the 30-year time frame, in many cases, you are accelerating the loss of a tax deduction. For those of you that file your taxes and you itemize, you're able to deduct the interest that you pay on your mortgage from your taxable income, thus reducing your tax bill, thus saving you money. So on this right side of the coin, you're also saving money by keeping the mortgage in the sense that you're saving money on your taxes. And money saved is money earned. There are better places for your excess money. So if you have discretionary income at the end of the month, or when you sit down and you do your budget, which I strongly advise you do, and you see that you have $100, $200, $500, $1,000 a month left over, there are many, many more places for those dollars to go that would serve your purposes better. And we're going to talk a little bit about a few of those later. Dollar for dollar, this is not your best return on the investment. If your interest rate on your mortgage is, let's say, 5%, and right now that's not hard to get, well, for a typical household who itemizes, the net interest that you pay after you take into consideration this one here, the tax deduction, the net interest rate on a 5% loan is more like 4.25%. So are there some opportunities in the marketplace for us to do better than 4.25%? And that's what we want to discuss. Now what I want us to do now is take a moment, and I want to poll the audience and see if I can get the right answer. When we look at these two columns, can anybody help me differentiate between the left side and the right side? And I wish I had the sound effects for Jeopardy to give us a clock. But let's give 10 seconds and see if anybody can come up with an answer. What's the difference between all the items on the left versus all the items on the right? Oh, we have one guest coming in. So we'll wait a moment for it. Oh, can you repeat the question? The question is, can you label all of the bullet items on the left? Can you put them all into one category versus all of the bullet items on the right? There's one difference between both sides of this equation. And it has to do with your brain. Okay, so here's the answer. All of the ones on the left are emotional reasons to pay off the mortgage. All of the ones on the right are factual, science-based, math-based, logical. So one's emotional and one's logical. To determine whether or not you should prepay a mortgage and pay off this debt, you have to decide, where do you get the most pleasure in your brain? Is it from doing things that are emotionally pleasing or things that are logically pleasing? So if your goal is to get debt-free faster, and I'm telling you that there are faster ways to get debt-free other than prepaying the mortgage, who are you going to let win that battle, your logical side or your emotional side? And there's not a right answer. There's not a wrong answer. But you have to be clear about how you're making your decision. You have to be honest with yourself. I'm making this with my heart as opposed to with my head, kind of thing. Fair enough? Any questions on that part of the topic? We're not done by any means, but I do have a couple more minutes. Okay, rolling right along. I mentioned earlier that there were some better places to put this excess cash. I would consider having an adequate cash reserve of the utmost importance. I've seen many clients over the years adding $50, $100 a month to pay off their mortgage, but they don't have $1,000 in their checking and savings accounts. How about using a high deductible insurance plan with a health savings account? This is the case where you can reduce your health bill, your premiums. Let's say for an average family from $600, you can maybe go down to $300. Saves you $300 every month. Problem with that is most people don't have the high deductible portion in checking and savings. So they're forced to spend an extra $300 every month on insurance premiums because they don't have the $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 saved for their high deductible insurance plan. Okay? The next one, I see lots of people not contributing to their 401k, not buying into a stock purchase plan because their excess money is going to the mortgage. Well, if you want to talk about a return on your investment dollar, we mentioned that several slides ago, right? Right here. If we want to talk about the return on investment dollar, well, the 401k, in most cases, there's a 50% match on what you put in. So if you put in $100, they're matching you $50. So right away, you've had a 50% return on your money. You could never get that kind of return prepaying your mortgage, right? We talked about investments. If you're one of those people that wants to go out into the investment world, there is a plethora of choices. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate trusts. The list goes on and on and on. Let's look at those briefly, since I have a pretty extensive background in investments. Here's a chart that shows the average rate of return for 4 of the most talked about indices: the Dow Jones, the S&P index, the NASDAQ, and the almighty gold. Well, if we look, let's pick the 10-year time frame, okay? If we look at the 10-year time frame, gold over the last 10 years has averaged 16.5%. The NASDAQ, 6%. The Dow and the S&P, not so much. Why? Because they got just brutally hammered in 2007, 8, and 9. Let's go a little farther back. Let's look at these 2 columns. Let's look at the last one, frankly. That's really the telltale, right? 30 years. 30-year mortgage, 30-year investment history. The Dow and the NASDAQ, the S&P hadn't been around for 30 years. The Dow and the NASDAQ averaging 9.5%. From 30 years ago to today, they've averaged 9%. Gold averaged 5%. So even if you're just in gold, which is frankly a terrible, terrible investment long term, and it's going to be an even worse investment very short term because of these really high peaks here and here. Um, Even if you're in these 30-year time frames, you're still getting double your money in an investment. Okay, so this could be a better place for your money. This is one people tend to not think about. How about prepaying bills that give you a deduction for doing so? Most of them revolve around insurance. You can pay your health insurance premiums quarterly or annually. Your life insurance premiums give you a discount. The biggest one that we all are familiar with is auto premiums. They give you anywhere from a 3 to 7% discount, most of them, to pay up front for a year's time. Well, 3 to 7%, somewhere in there is better than 4.25% on the mortgage. Fair enough? How about this one? This one burns me up, makes me jump up on my soapbox every time. How about any other debt that we have other than a mortgage? The car, the credit card, the personal line of credit, the Uncle Bill that we borrowed a little bit of money from. Any other debt has got to be better than a 4.25% mortgage loan. Fair enough? So at the end of the day, we come back to making the decision. Do we make it emotionally? Do we make it rationally? When our heart battles against our brain, who do you want to win? And again, I want to stress, there's no right and there's no wrong answer. But you need to understand that when you make the decision to prepay your mortgage, you're doing so at the expense of the betterment of your financial situation. But you're doing it to the betterment of your emotional situation. It's all a matter of how you think. Fair enough? Okay, let's open the floor. It is 8:37, so let's open it up to questions. If anybody should have one or two. We have time. You've got to love dead air, right? How about the little brain? Isn't he cute? And little heart. Isn't he cute? But we do have a question coming in. Maybe. All right, so the question, how do you find which bills you can prepay? Um, well, you're going to be told that initially, when you initiate a bill, whether it's your cable bill or your insurance, when you first sign up for it, they're going to ask you how you want to pay. Post facto, so after you've gotten the bill and you've been paying it for a while, the only way to do it is to actually call each one and ask them. Now, there are some that are going to be obvious. You know, credit cards are not going to allow you to do that. The most consistent ones are homeowners insurance, car insurance, sometimes health insurance, life insurance, depending on the kind of life insurance you have. That usually only works with term insurance to prepay. And it's also going to be dictated by, it's going to be mandatory in 99 out of 100 cases that the amount, I would first check the amount that you pay the exact same amount to every month. That's what I'm trying to spit out of my mouth. Because those are the ones that they can calculate what you're going to owe in an entire year. Good. Thank you for the question. Any others? Yes, please. Have all you want, Susan. Thanks for participating. I'm going to have to start calling on these other people and call them to the mattress here next week. All right, Susan, let's see. Matches is 401k up to 5%, I think, but we can contribute past that. This is what I generally recommend in contributing to 401ks. I say you put in the amount of money that they will match to the maximum. So in other words, they'll put in, let's say he puts in 10%, they'll match it 5%. So they're doing a 50% match up to 10%. But if he were to put in 11%, they would not match any additional money. If that's the break-off point, I would no longer contribute to that 401k in your case because I happen to know your age. You're young enough that I would redirect any additional money after the 401k to something like the Roth IRA. Because as young as you are, you're going to gain more benefit from a Roth IRA than you will from non-matched dollars in the 401k. Did I explain that well enough? I can explain it a different way, though. But before tonight, we had actually considered making extra money. Well, I'm glad I caught you before you considered making extra mortgage payments. I stopped you cold in your tracks, right, Susan? My job here is done. So Plan B, excellent. Let me know if I can help with Plan B. Yep, I know, my school teachers are the best. The best educators and the best listeners. At least 10. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, we'll close the session for tonight. Next week, I hope to have almost full to capacity audience because our topic is the #1 investment in the whole wide world. So who doesn't want to be here for that? I thank everyone for attending. Next week, your price of admission goes up. Bring a friend. Let's share this information with everyone that we know so that we can all make the best, most educated decisions when it comes to our money. Fair enough? And thank you all for coming. And as always, if you have any questions between now and next week, give the office a call. Thanks a lot, and everybody rest well.